why did you then switch to knots?
So I switched to knots. I've noticed over the decade plus that I've been involved in Bitcoin, a pretty consistent pattern with core devs. They value things like state safety above everything else. That's why they push miner activated soft forks instead of user activated soft forks, despite nodes inherently holding that power in this ecosystem. And I think that that's wrong because, as we saw in the block size wars, miners are just as easily able to lie about what code they're running as you can spin up a node and pretend like you support a UASF. There's no actual reliable way to tell how much support a fork has, no matter how you activate it. And the core developers, for sake of convenience, like to lie to themselves that there is. They like to say, well, if we can get all the miners on board with something, we know we have a degree of state security. We know we're not going to be getting reorgs. We know we're not going to be putting this incredibly valuable ecosystem through the economic ringer as forks are happening and reorgs are happening and double spends are happening. We want it to be as safe as possible. And that's a really good goal. But I'm sorry, core contributors, it's not possible to know how many miners support a miner activated soft fork any more than it's possible to know how many nodes support a user activated soft fork. And pretending that you can is disingenuous. It's a convenient lie that is used to, in my opinion, subvert node sovereignty. Nodes should be always arbitrarily choosing their consensus and the ones certainly activating it as well. And there's actually, I think, significant harm that can come about by delegating that to miners. And we saw that harm precipitate in the block size wars, where they blocked things, where they tried to propose forks that would increase node user resources, make it more difficult to run a node. They have a lot of incentive to dump their debt, their tech debt on us, these companies. So that was, I think, the first coming to this observation that they were never really going to allow an activation methodology across the network that put user sovereignty first. That was the first kind of thing that annoyed me about core. And then when we get to, more recent examples of this, like the lot true debate, I had a real big problem with the way the lot true debate went down. Lot true, if you're not familiar, was the Taproot activation debate. And we were arguing about how do we want Taproot to activate? Do we want it to be a miner activated soft fork? Do we want it to be a user activated flag day? Or what do we want to do here? And it was proposed that we should let nodes decide. We should give them a configuration option called lot. And if they set lot to true, then it would opt them into the flag day. But for the reasons that I've just described, Core's like, no. We can't do that. That's not safe. What if they fork without the miners and we give them, any user, the ability to arbitrarily config things? They're gonna fuck on themselves. This is one of their favorite words. They're gonna fuck on themselves if we let them choose how they activate their consensus changes. And Core likes to pretend that, we'll change all kinds of things, but when it comes to consensus stuff, we really leave that in the hands of the user. But that's just not true. They were against the UASF and the block size wars. They proposed speedy trial for Taproot, and they refused to allow configurations like lot true. So there is a consistent pattern here of them, even on consensus issues, denying users and nodes their voice. And the core of the problem I have with Core is that they don't give node runners a voice. When you have a protocol that's uniquely defined by its users, where its most valuable property is its decentralization, when you as a developer take away those user choices for any reason, even if it's good engineering reasons, even if it's good, network topology reasons, you're actually diminishing the decentralized properties of the network. And seeing as that's the most valuable thing we have, I have a huge problem with that. So don't like the way that Core talks around forks. I don't like the security policy of Core. I don't like that sometimes they let security issues go undisclosed for many years, and then when they do disclose it, I'm reading the disclosure and I'm like, this can be mitigated simply by changing my config or restarting my node. And if they would have told me about this in a more reasonable time frame, I could have protected myself. And instead of allowing me to do that, what they do is they use fear and intimidation to try and manipulate me into running a different set of code. And again, not allowing an informed node runner to make that informed choice of like, this is the code I want to run, this is the security patch content in this code, this is the vulnerability in this other code. Being unable to make that informed decision and instead using fear to try and manipulate me into running code is, in my opinion, completely antithetical to Bitcoin itself. So I have a huge problem with that as well. And then there's the mempool options, things like, do I want to be able to filter some of these inscriptions from my mempool or from my broadcast? Like, I think that that's a great thing. Maybe it does reduce my ability to accurately estimate fees, but how do you know my use cases? I should get to decide what my node's resources are consuming. I should get to decide how my node is configured. I mean, you let me run a node with no mempool at all, and what does that do to my fees? Estimation, at least as through the mempool as opposed to block history. Like, the idea that I shouldn't be able to choose what's in my mempool makes me crazy. So I have a problem with there too. And all these problems for me just kind of accumulated over time, over the decade plus that I've been involved, until eventually I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna explore other implementations. This isn't what I want.
So was op return then the latest one that kind of made you switch?
I was already switched by the time the op return thing happened.
But it seemed to be the one that kind of made things emotional and made things popular. Like at least this was the first one where like this was where knots really came on my radar with this op return, where guest all of a sudden brought it up, where I considered like, okay, should I switch? Should I consider it more like this seems to be for most people where like, okay, like we should care all of a sudden, like what implementation, and before most people were just running core.
On the scale of the issues that I just described, consensus issues, security issues, governance issues of our reference implementation, op return is such a nothing burger by comparison. Op return, like, you mentioned how the emotional argument, we're against shitcoins, which I am. I'm about as the most anti-shitcoin person I know, has galvanized people in a way that maybe they previously weren't really paying attention to some of these things. But because they've now that they're paying attention, maybe they would have some more issues with stuff like lot true or with the security policy. I have a problem with the emotionally charged nature of this argument and some of the like misinformation around it. Like, for example, we could always have large op returns. This isn't a new thing. Filters have never worked to stop anything from getting on chain. Certainly there's no more compelling argument that filters have never stopped anything from on chain than looking at, the sub 1 sat per vbyte fees. Every node in the world, except for miners, seems to filter 1 sat per vbyte fees. You can't imagine a filter policy more exclusive, except for possibly the non-standard filter policy that we previously had. And in both instances, you see those transactions, in the case of sub 1 sat per vbyte fees, in bulk, getting on chain from every miner. If filters worked, we wouldn't see sub 1 sat per vbyte transactions. Filters don't do anything to incur a cost to spam at all. And so, like, this is an example of one of the many emotional arguments and that are just fundamentally misinformed that I hear on the knots side all the time. And there's quite a few of those. They range from filters stop spam to if we change op return, we're going to have nefarious content like CP on chain. And like, I can look at the Bitcoin PRs, I can read GitHub, I can see that we XOR the blocks directory. I know BIP 324. I can see that we can encrypt relay. You can't tell me that, oh no, if we allow Core v30, suddenly the whole network's going to explode and everybody's going to be automatically detected by their virus detectors and their nodes shut down. Like, that's just not how Bitcoin works. So, like, there's so much misinformation on the knot side. It's very frustrating. And there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories too, like Core is bought off and paid for, Core is, corrupt and all these things. Like, they're not corrupt. They're engineers doing, frankly, an amazing engineering job from the context of traditional software development. Where they've faltered, in my opinion, is failing to acknowledge this isn't traditional software development. The efficiency of the network comes second to the decentralization of the network. And by refusing to allow nodes of voice in the direction of the reference implementation, not dissimilar to the way a product owner has a voice in traditional software development, they've foot gunned themselves, and that's why NOTS adoption has exploded.
Yeah, I see a lot of the most emotionally charged arguments in my YouTube comments, sometimes even when it's not even discussed on the podcast. Even then, and sometimes wonder if it's a bot or if they just want to make that topic a topic, even if it's not a topic on the podcast, where people say like, oh, if you run Core V30 and you're basically relaying CP, you will become a criminal just by running a node. And I'm like, what is this argument? like, that does not make any sense for me. All of a sudden, I'm a criminal just because I run a Bitcoin software implementation. Like, I don't know. I don't get that argument, and it's just very, very emotionally charged. And I've heard that argument multiple times from many different, very popular voices, even.
Absolutely. Like, and that's where it's coming from. It's coming from influencers like Mechanic. It's coming from influencers like Crater, and it's grossly technically misinformed. Like, you can verify, just as I did, that we XOR the blocks directory, the DAT files in the blocks directory. We do. You can verify how V2 relay works and how it's encrypted transport. The misinformation coming out of these camps is, in my mind, unforgivable. I had this utopic vision of what Bitcoin was over a decade ago. I had this idea that, oh, it's going to be beautiful. It's transparent. We're going to get rid of all of this misinformation because anybody could just verify. There's going to be no more of these fights or debates, and it's going to be beautiful because we'll just go, anytime there's a disagreement, we'll just go read the code and we'll view experientially what's happening with our nodes on the network. And that couldn't be further from the freaking truth. And I'm so disappointed. I've really had I'm disillusioned about people's ability to verify, because like so many of these things shouldn't even be a topic. But you're right. These are the things that have seemingly captured the user base's attention for whatever reason, be they, emotionally charged, or they're just less technical, so they're simpler to grok. But this is what people care about.
And it's because you laid it out perfectly, and then there's bigger issues actually, as the operator previously on, where like I wonder a lot, like, why is it now? I mean, obviously now, like the V30 is soon coming, so like maybe it's just the timing of it. But it is like, why is it now so popular? And I haven't figured out a good answer. Like, why is it now that people all of a sudden pay attention to this topic?
The only answer that I can come to myself is because of these specifically emotionally charged arguments. When you're arguing about things like lot true, like people are like, what the hell's lot? Like, what are you even talking about? Getting them to sit down and have that conversation is its own struggle. There's like a learning curve on the argument. Whereas the learning curve on child pornography is bad, there's no learning curve there. That's just like, oh yeah, I agree with that. It is bad. Like, we should stop. I don't want anything to do with that. It's so simple and accessible. And I think, even though deeply misinformed, filters stop spam. They stop this CP, they stop whatever. It's misinformed, but it catches people's attention in a way that these more complex and nuanced realities don't. And I actually think that a lot of the people pushing these things know better. I think that a lot of the people saying this misinformation in the NOTS camp know better. They know how to verify. They're developers. They know that the things that they're saying aren't true. And I think that for many of them, the ends justify the means. And I know there are people in both camps that think this. More NOTS adoption is worth misinforming some people and getting them all riled up, even if it's on a false pretense. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because I think it's very dangerous to have easily manipulated node runners. Those are not sovereign informed node runners. That's how we get the block size wars. That's how we get another B cache. I'm very concerned about that kind of thing. I want informed sovereign node runners, not ones listening to influencers that are making emotional arguments and verifying absolutely nothing.
Is the core it's so bad because core arguments is like, is it the core argument or is it the core argument? Is the main difference between core and NOTS from a philosophical standpoint that they're kind of saying, oh, we want to have less option for the node runners, and we want to kind of protect them from
Yeah,
making
it's
mistakes.
paternal. It's paternal. The core developers are paternalistic, as are pretty much all traditional software developers, and for good reason. I don't need to tell you, you're a software developer. Users are pretty darn stupid. They are very keen to shoot themselves in the foot. They love it. Trying to teach them anything at all is like trying to teach a pet rock to do tricks. It's a struggle and it doesn't work. And I think that they're applying the best practices in traditional software development. Everything that I have a problem with is actually them doing everything they've been taught for their entire professional careers to do. But Bitcoin demands new standards. It demands a different set of best practices that we actually have to develop ourselves and think about ourselves. And I don't believe that the core devs are able to extract themselves from that paradigm that they've been indoctrinated in.
It's interesting. And then knots is kind of the opposite, where you have way more options, way more uh just like more adjustability.
In knots, if you want to mess up your fee estimation all day, you can do that. Even to the point where you want to change the definition of vbyte, go ahead. You can change the definition of vbyte. Your fee estimates are going to be all over the place, but you can change the definition of vbyte. And if not to completely segue into a different topic, but like, for example, I think that that's one of the things that should have been done here. I think that we should be trying to petition miners to change their definition of vbyte to get rid of the SegWit discount. So many of the core arguments revolve around, oh, we need to stop, companies like Citria from pushing their shitcoins onto inscriptions. We need to stop the bloating of the UTXO set. And those are all true things. We do need to stop those things. But when the answer to that is, well, we'll just expand op return to be effectively limitless, that doesn't actually address the fact that the incentives are still to use that SegWit discount. And, as to the whack-a-mole argument, they're also absolutely right. If you start trying to like stop individual ways of doing spam, like you're just going to encourage them to obfuscate it in different ways. And so long as there's discounted block space in which to obfuscate, they will. So how do you solve that? You get rid of the discounted block space. Suddenly, there's no more discounted holes to hide in. You only are playing whack-a-mole in full paying block space, and then the incentives align where scammers should be using op return, because they're paying full price as they would in any of the other block space, and we can make it easier for them, like say expanding the op return default limits. Because you could do this already, like I really have no problem with making it easier to make large op return transactions, but the incentives of we want people to use op return for their garbage. Like if op return is the toilet, we need to convince people to sit on it first. And right now they're not. They're just flinging shit all over our ecosystem. We need to remove the incentives to do that before changing any op return settings is going to have impact on anything. And we see that. It's not like we changed op return settings and then, suddenly there's no more spam on chain.
Is this whole thing maybe a good thing for Bitcoin, because it makes it makes a lot of people aware that there is, first of all, more than one implementation that they can run. I think a lot of people kind of got to learn this lesson, and it also promotes running your own node.
I think that that's to the merit of the argument that the ends justify the means. It's okay that we're misinforming people. It's okay that, we're relying on these emotionally charged arguments, because it is creating these greater goods you're talking about, where more people are running nodes, where more people are aware and thinking about the node software that they're running, even if it is in the framing of whatever some influencer told them. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that the value of a node runner who is doing simply what they told because they've been emotionally manipulated into doing it is of the same value to the network or that individual as them being informed and making some educated decisions for themselves.
That's a really good point of having like more. And I never heard that actually, because I always like, yeah, like more node runners is good, but you also have, you should not count how many nodes that are running. You should count how many nodes are running that have a critical voice in the sphere, and not just do what someone else tells them to do. Like that in itself has no like it has value, of course, which is still a running node with a voice, but it's probably not have the same value as someone that thinks for themselves critical if this is a implementation they want to support, if there's a version, an upgrade they want to support, or how they want to see Bitcoin in the future. That's a really, like, I've never heard that argument. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.